You're listening to A World of Empowerment Service from Aingeal Rose Ahonu.
Hi, welcome to this series of videos about our visit to Chaco Canyon in northern New Mexico. Ever since Aingeal Rose began this quest, which began a couple of months ago, where she had this unquenching desire to visit Chaco Canyon, and we honored it and followed it. So you'll find in this series of videos our unfolding understanding of what Chaco Canyon is all about and what it was trying to tell us. And in this particular video, we are at the beginning phases, and you'll find us entering into it with some expectations. And as the series progresses, you'll find those expectations get changed and squashed, some of them, and indeed get turned around. And I won't spoil it for you, but you'll find that the outcome at the end of the series is very different for us than what it was when we set out on this amazing journey. So enjoy. Aingeal Rose is taking notes right now, documenting a very interesting and unfolding revelation about why we're here and what we're doing. We're wearing sunglasses because we're in the heart of Nevada. We're actually parked at the Hoover Dam, and it's Route 11, and all the way along we've been hitting these synchronicities like mile marker 11 and mile marker 22 on 11 South. And then last night we stayed in Las Vegas, and we were in room number 119, and 11 and 9 is 21, which is the world card in the tarot. And while that might seem unconnected and disconnected, it's very important for us because the last few weeks, in fact, is probably a couple of months at this point, Aingeal Rose has been plagued with concern about visiting Chaco Canyon in the Four Corners area, but it's located in northern New Mexico. And every time she pulled a tarot card to ask questions about it, she kept pulling the world card. And so for us to be in a 21 room, for example, is confirmation that there's something that we need to do, something that's unfolding. And I'm recording this because I believe it's very big, and we don't have all the answers as yet. We don't really know what we're doing, but we want to just put it down as these synchronicities unfold and as these revelations start occurring to us. And already there's been quite a few. For example, we did a little quantum jump last night in order to try and find answers. We jumped to Chaco Canyon, and we found that the historic record, let's call it the tourist spin that they put on it right now, is that it's from the years 1100 to 1400 or thereabouts.
850 to 1250.
Oh, 850 to 1250. So it's old but relatively new in the bigger scheme of things. But in our quantum jump, we found that it went way back. It went back so far that we're talking about the formation of the planet. Actually, we're talking about various dimensional splits that took place at the time. And we were there. And I don't mean just Aingeal Rose and I. It's very likely that most people that are on planet Earth right now were there at the time, or were there round about the formation. And that's probably explains why a lot of people are where they are right now. Now that in itself brought up a lot of other things, because recently I became a citizen of the United States, and it's like in that population of the Earth at that point in time, going back to the formation, many extraterrestrials became citizens of Earth. And I don't mean that in a political way, but just ended up living here, ended up forming a lot of the terraforming that has gone on, and lived here in order to stabilize the grids or whatever their purpose was. So the symbolism of me becoming a citizen of the United States, of all places, is rather bizarre, because it's not something that I ever really wanted to do. Now, there's other connections with that too. coming from Ireland, for example, it's regarded as the Emerald Isle, and Aingeal Rose has had experiences of being exposed to the emerald tablets of Thoth and going back to grid work that she did, where she read the first lines of the emerald tablets, which was, I, Thoth the Atlantean. Is that right?
That's correct. I read the first chapter every night. I read a chapter every night with your emerald tablets.
Yeah. And at that time she was doing grid work, which was basically in a part of what we now know to be Atlantis. Now, this might all seem very disparate information, little pieces, and it is, but we're starting to thread it together because we're of the understanding now that parts of Florida and the Caribbean and that whole area was part of Atlantis, and that it stretched up as far as Ireland. And we had some very interesting experiences when we were in Ireland one year, where we looked out on the west coast. We were trying to find a particular island, and that island only appears on some very ancient maps. It doesn't appear on modern maps, and mythology has it that it appears every 7 years and disappears every 7 years. We understand that to be part of Atlantis. Now, why is that connected? Well, because Atlantis is probably where the Atlantic Ocean came from. And Atlan, I believe, is a very close name to Aslan in The Lion King. And in that quantum jump, I found that I was part of the Lyrian race who came to Earth at that point in time. And it's interesting that the name of the lion is Aslan or Atlan, or short for Atlantis.
I wonder if you're thinking of the Chronicles of Narnia.
Or maybe the Chronicles of Narnia, I'm not sure, but it's one of those. But we all know, of course, that those Disney movies, they do tend to sometimes reveal some important and sometimes hidden information to us. We've seen that in lots of incidences. And in some places you'll hear where the dark forces are obliged to reveal certain information, and that can be revealed through Hollywood, as we've heard and as we've seen. But aside from that, these are very thin threads. There may be no substance to them. They may or may not have any real consequence or substance, but we're threading them together because we feel that we're on a path of unfolding. It's like a puzzle, and the puzzle parts are starting to fit together. So all this whole business of 1111 also is very interesting. The whole business of 12-6 twins. Aingeal Rose and I are 12-6 twins. The 12s are crucial because that's part of a clock face, and the 12 is at the top, the 6 is on the bottom, and the 3 and 9 cross it. So you do have this sacred geometry of north, south, east, west. And the Chaco Canyon is located at very close to the four corners in the United States. It's the only place in the United States where 4 states meet together in one place. So and that's a political divide, of course, so it's nothing to do with the greater scheme of things. But it's interesting that all that should be located there. Now, there's also connections between this and the Anahazi and the Navajo. And it's interesting that the headquarters of the Navajo Nation is in that Four Corners area, very close to Chaco Canyon. So there's a huge amount of synchronicities that are happening, and we're on the process, we're on the road exploring and finding out what that's all about. Aingeal Rose believes that it has to do with ascension and has to do with ascension codes. I'm going to ask her to say something about that now, because I do believe that too, and I believe that's also why we and so many others are unfolding our life purpose, which is part of that dimensional split that we often talk about, where we are facilitating the ascension of Earth.
Well, the only thing I got in the quantum jump about Chaco Canyon, I was been racking my brain as to what do I need to do there? Why is it gnawing at me the way it is? And it finally came that we're there to restore ascension frequencies there that were in the land originally, and that the Lyrian people carried with them the ability to ascend, the ability to take themselves out and rematerialize themselves And I was made aware that we still carry the original Ascension codes, and we're going there to reactivate the codes, put them back in the land, and basically resurrect the place if we can, or at least put the Ascension frequencies on grid lines that will carry through the earth for people. Also, I was aware that there were souls that did not make it out back when cataclysms started happening on the earth. And there were souls that did not ascend out. They didn't make it out, and they went underground. So we're being asked to put these frequencies back in so they can get home. And that's not the first time I've done that in different places, but this is what was coming to me about this area. So it's very important that we get there, and soon.
So that's it for the moment. This is just a little offloading of our thoughts, and by way of documenting our journey and the unfolding of it all. And that's it until the next time. And we hope you enjoyed that. We do encourage people to comment and to share, and we are being vulnerable in our own expectations and our own thought processes about this whole idea of finding our extraterrestrial origins. And it changes as we learn more and more and more. And that's why we encourage comments, because it's a good thing to explore all of this. And we find that through our own quantum jumping and physically being on the ground and ingesting our sacred earth waters, that we can learn a lot more than we can through books or even scientific methods. And certainly we can learn a lot more than listening to the historical narrative. So it's all subject to change. It's all unfolding. It's a dynamic system we're in, and we are learning so much. And we're so glad that you're with us and that you're sharing this with us and that you've watched up until this point. We encourage you now to follow on with the rest of the series, because, as I mentioned in the beginning, our own thought processes changed, our expectations changed, our learning changed, and I won't spoil, but the final outcome is rather interesting. So blessings and thank you for viewing. Bye-bye from myself, Ahonu, and from Aingeal Rose.
Subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and on our website at worldofempowerment.com.
Don't miss an episode. Hit the subscribe button now.